We're talking today with Mr. Harvey De Vries of Cutlerville, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. All right, now Mr. De Vries, can you begin by giving us a little bit of background on yourself? To start with, where and when were you born?
Okay. I was born in McBain, Michigan, at a home on July 13th, 1922.
All right. And what did your family do at that time?
They were farmers,
Okay.
dirt farmers.
Okay. And did you grow up on that farm or did you move someplace later?
No, I grew up on that farm until I was 19, then I went in the service.
All right. So your family was able to hang on to that farm even through the Depression?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, what kind of things were you growing then?
Well, I would grow, say, 10 acres of corn, 10 acres of oats, and we had some wheat, and we raised tomatoes, pickles, strawberries, raspberries, and string beans.
All right. Now, how many kids were in your family?
There was 9 of us total, 1 brother and 7 sisters.
All right. Now, were you on the older or the younger end of that group?
I was number 2.
Okay. Now, how long did you stay in school?
8th grade.
Okay. And then why did you leave school after 8th grade?
To help support the family. And so I left I graduated at the 8th grade, and I went home, stayed home and worked.
Okay. So you worked on the farm then?
Yeah.
All right. Now, before you went into the military, did you have any other kind of work that you did?
Yes, I worked in Grand Rapids 2 winters. I worked at a plating plant, National Brass, on Madison Avenue in Grand Rapids. And then also the following winter, I worked at a warehouse. I just can't remember the name.
All right. Okay. Now, before Pearl Harbor, were you paying much attention to what was happening in the world? You know, there was a war going on in Europe, that kind of thing?
No.
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 Not really your problem at that point.
No, didn't bother me one bit, you know.
Now, do you remember hearing about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yes, definitely.
And how did that happen? Or how did you learn about it?
Well, it was on a Sunday, I guess, and we came over the radio. December 7.
Okay. Now, before that, there had already been a draft that was starting and things like that going on.
Yes.
Had you considered the possibility of joining the military, or?
No, I had to stay home. In fact, I stayed home an extra 6 months after I was drafted to finish out the farm for the fall.
Okay. So you're drafted, but you still have a deferment of sorts, at least for a
Right.
while.
So I was drafted in July or something like that, and I didn't go in until December after the harvest.
Right. So December 42 then?
December of 42.
Okay. All right. Now, once Pearl Harbor happened, then, did you start to pay more attention to events and the news and that kind of thing?
Not really, no.
No.
It didn't scare me that much. I excited about it. I wanted to go into service, and I was well pleased with that.
All right. So they drafted you, but if they hadn't drafted you, you might have gone anyway?
Yes.
Okay. Now, once you do get your draft notice and so forth, and you're told to report then at the end of 1942, where do you go at that point?
Went from McBain to Battle Creek, Fort Custer. Fort Custer, we were divided out, and I, with another group, went to Camp Robinson, Arkansas. I had my 6 weeks of basic training there.
All right. Now, how did they get you down to Arkansas from Michigan?
By train.
By train. And had you taken a long train trip like that before?
No.
Okay. So what do you remember about that trip?
Not a thing.
Okay. Do you have a sense that it took a while to get down there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Now, what was Camp Robinson like?
Well, it was new to me and very interesting. And I had a strict father. So any order I did immediately. And since I was tall, I was always the head of the squad, which suited me fine, you know. And the food was good, and I enjoyed the training. very much.
Now, you'd been doing a lot of farm work, so were you in good physical condition when you went down there?
Yes, I was.
All right. Now, were there some other guys you were training with there who were having more trouble than you were?
Oh, yes, many of them, yes.
All right.
Yeah, they couldn't keep it up. And as long. They go, oh, I'm so tired, you know. But it seems like I had all kinds of strength at that time.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you training alongside men from all over the country, or were most of them kind of from one area?
Well, we had some from Florida, from most of the eastern part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at this point, you're just getting standard Army basic training?
Right.
Yeah, so there's physical conditioning, follow the orders, that kind of thing?
Right.
All right.
And rifle training and so forth.
Okay. Now,
that's where I became a sharpshooter.
all right. Now, had you had any experience with guns at home? Or?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you did some hunting or things like that?
Yeah, I had a BB gun when I was 10,
Mm-hmm.
and a shotgun when I was 12, and a 30-30 when I was 15, 16. So I was well familiar with guns.
Right. Okay, so that likely helped you when you got there. Now, did you train at all with machine guns or mortars or things like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you learned some of that too. All right. Now, after the 6 weeks are up at Camp Robinson, then what happens?
Then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, to the tank destroyers, 644 tank destroyers.
All right. Now, the term tank destroyer got used by the U.S. Army for really two different kinds of things.
Right.
There were the towed anti-tank guns, and there were also self-propelled guns with open turrets.
Yeah.
Now, what were you training on?
We were training, they called it a tank destroyer. It was an open top turret.
Right.
And it had a 16-foot, 3-inch gun.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I became the gunner.
Okay, so you're a gunner. It's an M10 tank
Because
destroyer.
I hit a target within 3 shots, 3 miles away.
So now you're a sharpshooter on a whole different level.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how much time did you actually spend out in Fort Lewis?
Not too much. We came there in March, February, March.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on a couple different trainings into Portland, Oregon. But then I didn't like the idea of being inside of a tank when you're trapped.
Mm-hmm.
So there were 17 of us volunteered for the paratroopers.
All right. Now, how did that opportunity come up to volunteer for the paratroopers?
I don't know. They just asked us, the captain asked us, if anybody would like to join the paratroopers.
All right.
And they 17 joined up, and we went by train from Portland, Oregon to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Now, do you remember that trip?
Yes.
Okay, what can you tell me about it?
Well, it was an exciting trip. We had a private car. Food was all served to us there. And at night, the first night we stopped in Denver, and we asked the railroad people if they could put that car on a train in the morning. And they said, sure. So we went out in the town that night. We did the same thing in Nashville, Tennessee. And then the following day, we arrived at Fort Benning.
All right. So you didn't have an officer supervising you or somebody
Nope.
who could say, no. You were just on a car and you were going to Georgia.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's an unusual deal. I don't think I've ever heard of that particular thing happening before.
No, because some guys didn't come in for 2 weeks later.
Okay. Now, when you got down to Fort Benning, Georgia, now you're getting it's kind of late spring, early summer in there someplace?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
September.
Oh, okay, so a little later than that.
September we went in.
All right. Now, what did the training consist of for the paratroops? What did you do
All
there?
right. There's a row of towers, and you would go up there, and you would slide down cables, and you would learn how to when they released you, how to tumble, whether you're over your right shoulder or over your left shoulder, whatever position you happen to be in. Because you know that when you jump, they say, a paratrooper, the wind could be blowing from a different direction, and you have to learn to twist and turn. Mm-hmm. And those towers were very good. And then the colonel got sawdust. That's where you landed in. Got some in my mouth, and I spit it out. So the colonel says, pick that up in your hands and run around. I must not spit in the sawdust. I must not spit in the sawdust.
All right. Why did they have a problem with spitting the sawdust?
It just makes you take orders.
Okay. So
that's what I think.
Still training. All right. Now, at what point do you go from just sliding down cables to simulating a parachute jump and then a parachute jump?
Yeah, well, I think it was only a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we went into a C-47, which took us up. And one thing about that is, when you're sitting in what they called it, the sweat sheds, and you waiting to get on the plane, and the sergeant in there, he was telling a story. He said, now you don't have nothing to worry about. This is your first jump, but he says, you got the cable, your parachute will protect you down. That opens automatically when you jump out at 75 feet below. And if that don't work, you got your reserve chute. Mm-hmm. And he said, when you get down below, he says, there's a truck waiting to take you back to the barracks. Of course, he says, this one guy, he jumped, his main chute didn't open, and his reserve chute didn't open. And he looked down below, and he says, I bet that sergeant's lied about the truck, too. Just the stories to scare you.
Right. Okay. Now, what can you tell me about the first jump you made, the first practice jump?
Oh, all right. I was, since I was, I guess, head of the squad, there were 16 of us that jumped. I was standing on one side of the door, the lieutenant was standing on the opposite side, and I was watching for the green light. And as soon as that would get on, I would holler, let's go. And I pushed the lieutenant out, and all those behind me pushed me out, because they had a sergeant in the back, pushed for all his worth. That's where we made our first jump. You could stop if you wanted to.
Right. Now, you were ready to do this? This was...
Yes,
okay.
I was.
And what did it feel like to actually jump out of the plane?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember exactly. I know it was a beautiful feeling after you when the chute was open, and you looked to see the lights of the cities around, and that was wonderful. But then you had to think of, we were only 1,200 feet up, so we had to make sure our knees were bent slightly, and we follow which way it's going. But it's such a short time, you're down, and you're falling on the ground. And then you roll your chute up, you snap out of it, roll it up in a bundle.
Okay. Now, how well did all of that work for you?
How well?
I mean, yeah, did you hit the ground properly and get out of the chute?
I did. Everything worked fine for me.
Okay. Now, did it feel any different landing than it did when you were practicing using the cables, or was it pretty much the same?
Not really. No, not really. It's about the same thing. Yeah. And we had 4 jumps, and then after we had a night jump. That was a little bit different. A little bit more scary, because you couldn't see nothing below, and you didn't know where the ground was going to come up and hit you.
So what did you do about that? What did they teach you about a night jump to help keep yourself safe?
Just be ready.
Okay.
Have your knees bent, and your arms ready to tumble either which way.
Right.
And it worked out fine.
Yeah. And
I landed standing up.
And you'd sort of know which way the wind was carrying you anyway,
oh, yes.
So you know what side to roll on and that kind
right.
of thing. Now, during the course of those practice jumps you were taking, did anything go wrong for the men you were going out with?
Not any of ours, no.
Okay.
No. I heard of another group, though, where one got caught in an updraft of air. He was going up instead of coming down. And they were shouting with the speakers from the ground, pull your chute, pull your risers. So you pull out of it, see? Mm-hmm. and then you come down gently again.
And were there any broken legs or sprained ankles or things
No.
when people hit the ground?
No.
Okay. Now, by the time you got there to this paratroop training, had they already trained a lot of men before you?
Yeah, see, I was in, I went through class 82, so they had all the other ones before.
All right. So by this time, probably they knew what they were doing, or at least you hope
yeah.
so. So they've gotten all of that down pretty well.
Yeah.
Now, how long did the program at Fort Benning wind up taking then, do you think?
4 weeks, maybe?
Okay, so not real long.
No.
All right.
I went through pretty quick.
And once you completed that, what did they do with you?
Then they sent me to Camp McCall, North Carolina. And then there would be, there was our outfit that I was with at that time, the 242 training, I hurt my knee on the jump on the practice thing. And I was in the hospital, I pulled a cord. So I didn't go out with the outfit. And I had 30-day furlough. And that's when I met my wife the first time. And then I went back to Fort Benning, and I had to wait for the next shipment to go out. And then I did everything in those 3-4 weeks that I waited for the next to go out, because that was in May, and before the second group went out. And then the whole bunch, we went aboard the Queen Elizabeth. We sailed across on. There was no
Convoy?
no convoy, because the Elizabeth was too fast. In 3 days, we were in Blackpool.
Now, did the ship do any zigzagging? Or did it change course a lot?
Not that I know of.
All right. And what was the trip like? Was it a smooth voyage, or was it bumpy?
Yeah, to me, it was very good. You know, we were paratroopers. They thought us a little bit better than the rest of them, because we had A deck, we had cabin 16, and we could walk around the deck, where some of them were down in F deck. They couldn't see none.
Right.
You know, infantrymen, 18,000 troops went aboard.
Yeah. And about how many were paratroopers, do you think? How large was your unit?
I don't really know.
Okay. You figure a few hundred or 1,000 or?
Yeah, I would say in our unit, maybe we had 3,000. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Now, do you remember? So you got to England then? Was that before D-Day or after D-Day?
Just before D-Day.
Okay. And so, what did you do once you? Where did they land you in England? First of all.
I think it was Blackpool or Liverpool.
Liverpool, quite possible. Yeah.
And then we took, by truck, went to Swindon. And that was just below the airport. But we could see the planes taking off for D-Day. And that was, sky was black with them.
Okay. Now, the group that you trained with originally at Fort Benning, that Class 82, had they been integrated into the 82nd and 101st already? So
Yes.
So
yeah, I didn't. I afterwards, I met some of them I trained with, but it was only us that came in the second trip, you see. So you didn't get to know really anybody real close. And that's when they put me in the 506 Parachute Regiment. I was as a machine gunner, corporal.
Were you assigned to a specific company, or?
Yeah, I was I Company.
So 3rd
Battalion.
Right. Oh, the 506.
Of the 506.
Okay. Now, did you join them after they got back from D-Day?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you do in England then between the time when you arrived and the time when you actually joined the 506?
Well, I don't know, just through the BS.
Okay. So you basically just stayed in camp and you didn't really go anywhere?
Yeah. Well, we did go out on a small hike here and there, you know, through the farms and so forth.
Okay. So you got a little bit of training in, but you didn't go into London or anything like that at that time?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did go into London at that time because we were there for, I'll say from June until September.
Mm-hmm.
So we had quite a bit of time.
Okay. Now, what did London look like to you then? What did you see there?
I don't know, I guess we stood there with our mouths open. We'd see the Tower of Big Ben, the changing of the guard, and things like that, and talked to some of the girls that were around there. They all swamped around, everywhere. And I thought it was very nice. I was just there one night.
Mm-hmm. And did you see much of the civilian population in the area around your base? I mean, did you have much interaction with the English people there?
No.
Okay.
We stayed in sort of a castle at Little Cote, C-O-T-E,
Mm-hmm.
Little Cote, and that was walled in. And so you're amongst yourselves. You didn't know there was any Englishmen around.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, were you following sort of the news of the Normandy campaign and what happened to the paratroopers and things like that? Or
Oh yes, we would get that. We would get that news every day. The lieutenant would brief you what's going on and so forth.
All right. And then in September, then you joined the 101st.
Well, I guess the 506 was part of the
Yeah, right.
101st.
The 101st is the division, 506 the regiment.
And when they came back after D-Day,
Mm-hmm.
I think they came back 3 weeks later.
Right.
And that's when we joined them.
Okay.
And then we had everybody had to be dispersed out to who missed, who had the most killed, I guess.
Right.
That's about what it was. And I became a machine gunner in the I Company of the 3rd Battalion.
All right. Now, what kind of reception did you get when you joined that unit? How did they treat you when you got there?
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. Everybody wanted to tell us everything. And especially those that was over there and came back, And through the weeks that followed, everybody would have a story of some time. It was interesting.
So you got some chance to get to know the veterans as well as the other new guys.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. All right. Now, eventually, of course, they send you on another parachute drop, and this time you go with them. Can you describe that mission and what you were doing?
Well, we just got on the plane and went to Holland, and we dropped in Zon, someplace Z-O-N, or just outside of Eindhoven.
Eindhoven, right.
And let's see,
Did they tell you anything before you made the drop? Did you have any idea of where you were going or what you were supposed to be doing?
yes, we had to guard a bridge over a canal, and chase the Germans out of Eindhoven. And I was watching. I carried my machine gun just like you would a rifle, and with the belt slung over my shoulder. And we come down the streets of Eindhoven, and I know the street very well because that's where my friends live now. And he showed me where he lived. And there was out of a basement of a window of a house, maybe a couple 100 yards off, machine gun fire rippled around us. And the lieutenant says, hit the ground. Well, I was here, the foxhole was there, the lieutenant was there, and he beat me to the foxhole. So I laid along the fence, and he took my machine gun, would draw anything. And when that quieted down, then he got up and I took over the machine gun. But I watched that window. When I seen movement, I would keep him it down.
Right.
So then
Now, you've gotten a little bit ahead of yourself in the story here, because in order to get into the streets of Eindhoven, you have to jump out of an airplane first. So,
Well, we did.
right. And
Yeah.
but so I want you to sort of describe the flight over. You get your
Over the
orders.
canal?
Well, you get your order. You're in England. You get your orders to go and load up on the planes, and they've told you a little bit about where you're going. What do you remember about the flight over and about the jump into Holland?
Not really a thing. No, I didn't. We knew there was some soldiers that were the hid men that landed, say, a half hour before we did, for a landing spot.
Right.
And what we had to do was gather at a certain point and then wait for orders from there. That's about what it was.
Okay. Now, did you get fired upon when you were flying into Holland or when you made the jump?
Yes. Yes, we did. I no more than landed, and I had my machine gun in 2 minutes. I had a machine gun ready. But we seen a plane came over that got shot down, got shot at, and I counted the troopers coming out. There should be 16 troopers plus 3 men on the plane, see? And when the 19th one came out, he was only about 75 feet from the ground, and he hit the ground and he bounced 4 or 5 feet in the air, it seemed like. And what happened was he came over to me with a machine gun, and he says, "I'm the pilot of that plane." And he says, I said, "Well, the way you bounced, you must have hurt yourself terrible." He said, "Not a bit. The only thing he could figure out, his chute opened the same time he hit. It made him bounce in there, and he was a scratch on him."
All right. And then did they successfully put you in your drop zone? I mean, did you land where you were supposed to land?
Yes, pretty well. Yeah.
All right. Now, did any of the veterans kind of comment on that? Because you were landing during the day rather than at night, which they did in Normandy. Did they like dropping in the day better?
I don't remember any comments on that, no.
Okay. But you land there, and then your unit assembled pretty quickly then?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you go toward the bridge or into town then?
No, we went into town.
Right. So that gets you into Eindhoven, and that gets you where you're talking about being there in the street.
Right.
And you're using your machine gun to provide covering fire to keep the
Right.
German machine gunner
Yeah.
down.
I fired while I was walking. And if I, see movement up ahead. But the Dutch people were busy in their homes. And we had 188 shell came not too far away, and I went right through the door in somebody's kitchen. But I wasn't hurt a bit, went right out again. And so then we got through the back door in the backyards. We see German troops going off, and I just fired out, just to urge them on, not thinking of hitting anything. But that's when we chased them out in Eindhoven.
All right. And then at this point, that there were supposed to be British troops coming in on the ground to come in and reinforce you. Now, did that happen right away, or what happened next?
That I don't know.
So what happened to you then after you kind of chased off those Germans the first time?
Oh, wait.
Because you said you...
Yeah, we assembled with the Lieutenant Peace. I think that was his name. And we had to march. We had to march to certain grounds to hold it, because was I company, and B and C companies were off to our left or something like that. I'm not even sure on that. So.
Okay. Now, you were what was it that you were trying to hold or protect?
So that they couldn't blow up the bridge.
Okay, so so now you go out to the bridge out at Zon and you're holding
Right.
that. Okay. And then what happened once you got there?
Nothing. We just positioned ourselves to protect the bridge.
Okay.
And that was about all that there was of that. Because when I went through there years later, in '89, I went there, there was a new bridge there, and they're called the Airborne Bridge.
All right. Now, about how long did you spend at that bridge, do you think?
Oh, a day or two.
Okay.
And then we went on towards Veckel, Uden. There was a jelly factory near there, jam factory. We crawled on through that thing and make sure that was all empty. And then we went on into over IJssel. And then we had up by the canal. There's two canals going through. The Wilhelmina and the Wall, I think. I'm not sure on these names.
Yeah. Well, the wall is an actual river.
Yeah.
And that's where Nijmegen is, and that's where the 82nd was in a pretty big fight.
Yeah, there was, right? But but the 82nd, they moved up, and of course we moved into their place.
Right.
They were moving up towards Arnhem.
Right.
And let's see. Oh, then I was put out on guard. Oh, maybe a couple miles ahead. Tito and Fisher and I were put out on guard, and the Holland has all these farms with ditches around them, see? We stayed in the ditch. And we had to watch for Germans coming from the coast, Rotterdam and Amsterdam. They want to get back to their country. And we were supposed to hold them. And we had to notify them if we seen them. And we sat there, quite a while from early morning. And then 9 o'clock, near a big tree, I got out of the ditch so I could get near that tree and look, see if there was anybody coming. And that's when I got hit. And it was a sniper bullet because it came at this angle, see? And there's a white spot. And it came out between the shoulder blades. And I just turned around to the guy. I says, I'm hit. Now, Tito, you and Fisher get back to the company, tell them where I am, and that I'm hit. And I understand afterwards that Fisher got wounded on the way back, but Tito was okay. But this was around 9:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And they didn't pick me up until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was unconscious most of the time. I lost a lot of blood, evidently. The Germans cleaned me out, took my wallet, my guns, and left me for dead. But then I woke up and I heard somebody in the ditch, and I heard him talking English, and I jiggled the telephone wires that were in it. He said, oh, he's up here. I said, that's when Sergeant, or the medic, Kidder, and Sergeant Harley Dingman picked me out of there. And they put me on a blanket, and they dragged me to about a half a mile to a Jeep, put me on the Jeep, and says, go to the first aid station. And that, from the aid station, they flew me to England.
Now, at that point, were you conscious through all of that, so you
Yeah.
were aware of what was going on?
Yeah.
All right.
I
Now-
didn't when they was pulling me, no.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so the bullet, did that manage to miss your lung and just go through muscle, or?
Well, it went through, it did hit the top part of the lung. Because when I was in the hospital, they had to they drew a quart of fluid out of my lung. And in the morning, in the afternoon, a pint. And the next day, a pint. And that was pretty well what did it. and they're giving me fluids all the time. But it was, I think, it was an armor-piercing bullet, because it didn't make no big hole in the back.
Right. So it went through cleanly. It didn't do as much damage as it might have if it had broken out.
It didn't hit any spare parts. The Lord protected me pretty well.
Right. Now, how long did you have to spend in a hospital after that?
Well, I was there a couple of weeks, and I had a cold in the meantime, and the surgeon, he'd come every day, and he opened my mouth. Oh, he said, you got bad tonsils. Come to my office this afternoon. I walked to his office, opened my mouth, he would clip. He took my tonsils out, and I walked back to my ward.
Didn't that hurt?
He's right, he numbed it first.
Okay.
But I was surprised. It was the pliers with a loop, a ring, that he grabbed him and clipped it right off.
And that was all there was to it?
That's all there was to it. Then he says to me, eat toast tomorrow morning. That'll keep the scabs off. It was good thinking, but very rough about it.
Right. Okay. Well, did it get sore later? I mean, did it give you problems? You just...
No problem. In a week, I was okay.
All right. Now, once you recovered, did they send you back to your unit at that point?
In December, I was there. October 5th, I got hit. November, and then into December, about the middle of December, that's when the Battle of the Bulge broke out.
Right.
Well, that's when they got us all back to Holland. And I rejoined my outfit in Holland. And since I was wounded, they didn't want to put me as a machine gunner. They put me in S2.
And what is S2?
Intelligence section.
Okay.
And I thought they're really getting fooled.
What kind of job did you have with the intelligence section?
All right. We were marching through Germany, and anybody made a call that they seen SS troopers in different houses, we'd have to go and investigate. Or booby traps under bridges that we had to cross.
Okay.
That was us, the 5-6 men.
Okay. Now, were you with your battalion during the Battle of the Bulge?
Yes.
Okay, because they were at Bastogne, right?
Right.
Okay, so you were there then in late December?
Yeah. Oh, that's where we joined up. See?
Right. Now, but did you join them before or after the Germans surrounded the place?
It must have been before, because I was in a foxhole, and the Germans walked right past us. But they were German soldiers, not the SS.
Right.
And they didn't bother us. And when they were gone, we was got back to a little town of Foy.
Yeah. Yes, that's outside of Bastogne.
Right. That's the one I was trying to think of. Into Bastogne itself, I don't think I was.
Right.
But I was in a town of Foy.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that the Germans are walking by you. I mean, isn't that a problem? I mean, if Germans are kind of getting into your lines, or...
No, it didn't seem like it, because the sergeant says to leave them go.
Now, were there other units behind you that would take care of them, or?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, more of my company was behind me,
right.
Or
so
other platoons.
Okay. So were you in a forward position or a lookout position where you were?
At that time, I don't really know.
Okay.
What position I was in.
Okay. Now, about how long do you think you spent out in that area? Were you out there for a few weeks, do you think?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember really. I think only a good week.
Okay.
And then Patton's army came in.
Right. But fighting goes on in that area for quite some time afterward. It took a while to actually push the Germans back
yeah,
again.
but that was Patton's army mostly.
Right.
We went to Reims, France, our outfit, for a rest camp.
Okay. Now, in the time there, when you were around Foix, which is the town you were at, did you get attacked at all? Or you didn't get bombarded or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay. And you didn't have any orders where you were to go forward or
Nope.
do anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
And then after we were at a rest camp area, I don't know, maybe there a week or so. Then they gathered our company, and we made our way through through Cologne and went south towards Berchtesgaden. We finally ended up there.
Right.
And
You
we have
picture of that.
pictures up here
Right.
where we're sitting in the Berchtesgaden.
Okay. Now, the Battle of the Bulge is sort of famous for being, among other things, very cold. I mean, did you have
It
to?
was. It's bitter cold.
And what did you do to keep warm while you were out there in your foxhole?
Just not a thing. You couldn't even have a fire. You just got snow around you, and you sat in under what cover you could. And most of us were positioned. One could see another one, either which way, and they were all that way. And because most of your instructions were given by signals. And but the Germans didn't even want to fight there. But the SS troopers way back, but they stopped. I think when Patton joined, that must have stopped. That's the only thing I can figure out.
So you were lucky enough to be in a relatively quiet part of the line when that stuff was going on.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, so that's kind of December and into January, and then the real kind of push into Germany is more in March and April and so forth. I know that some part of your division wound up a little farther south in kind of northeastern France for a while, because you went down to Reims. That's your
Reims,
base
right.
area in the rear, Mourmelon, and then from there, did you kind of go through northern France toward Germany at that point, or?
Could be. I don't remember.
All right. Well, in those last few months of the war, then, as you're going forward, did your unit do much actual fighting, or were you
No.
just mostly moving?
No, we were mostly moving. We were capturing German soldiers, sending them back to the concentration camp where they were kept. And some of them we went with them, and some of them we didn't. And but that's all we did. But when we came into Berchtesgaden, there were all tunnels down through there. The food was still warm on the table, so they hadn't left for much before that. We came in, and then we were at Selim Sea, Austria, right after Berchtesgaden. That's where we were going to be for a while. And we went to a movie one Saturday afternoon, and the guys, after the movie, the guy said, "Come on, let's get the Red Cross for coffee." He said, "I know the way," and he did. And there was a fence through the backyards. He went about that high in the way, you know. He jumped over it and disappeared. Well, I jumped over too. There was an 8-foot drop on the other side.
Oh.
Well, I twisted my knee, and they carried me out. And that was the last I had of any fighting at all.
Right. Now, did you go to a field hospital after that, or just stayed with the unit and didn't do anything?
No, I never went back to our outfit.
Okay.
I had a lot of souvenirs I wanted to take, but they divided them out, some of them.
All right. Now, before that incident happened, you were talking about taking German prisoners and so forth. What did the German soldiers look like to you? What impression did you have of them?
Nice young people. A little bit older, some of them. The old army, they were older people. But they wanted to talk. And they were very friendly. It was the SS troopers that drove them. Because the Germans themselves didn't want to fight. That's the way I see it. So.
Now, did you see any of the SS soldiers? Did you take any of them prisoner?
Or? Oh yes.
And how did they behave when you were dealing with them?
Well, they were smart alecky, more or less, you know. Thought they knew it all and everything else. And I know my platoon sergeant or the lieutenant, either one of them, sent two soldiers, two of us, to bring them back to concentration camp, to where they were keeping them. And he says, concentration camp was a couple miles back. He said, I'll give you 10 minutes to get back here. I said, they must have killed them all. That's the only way I figure out. We heard a lot of shooting, and they just never got to camp.
Now, had you heard stories by then about atrocities being committed by the SS and shooting American soldiers and that kind of thing?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
All right. Now, among the German soldiers, were there also, you mentioned there were some who seemed to be kind of older men. Were there also some very young ones?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Kids almost. Yes. Okay. 16, 17 years old.
Yeah. Because they were kind of down to that at that point.
Yeah, evidently.
Now, in the different places where you went, through Holland and then later into France, Germany, Austria, did you see much of any of the civilian population in those places?
No, we stayed in a few houses. And they were very hospitable, though. Women would cook for us and everything in the houses, And instead of staying in camp, we stayed at different houses. But then when we had like sort of a hotel in Sea. That's where we all had rooms.
Right.
Yeah. And from there we couldn't go wherever we wanted because we were sort of in rest camp evidently. But then when of course, after I hurt my knee, I went just in from one hospital station to another till we come to Cherbourg. And then I was put on a hospital ship, the Santa Rosa, and I sailed into Newport News, Virginia.
Okay. Now, when you were on that hospital ship, were you confined to the bed, or could you move around a little bit?
I was a bed patient. But as soon as they left, I got up and I walked around deck. Meal times come, I jumped back in my bed and they served me in my bed. But that was on my own volition.
All right. Now, where did they land you in the States?
Newport News, Virginia.
Okay.
Then when you went to a hospital there, and then I went to Mayo, and then from Mayo to Fort Custer, where I finally got discharged.
All right. Now, when was that when you got discharged?
February 15th, 1946.
Okay, so you spent a long time getting treated in various hospitals then.
Oh, yeah. I spent 9 months in the hospital.
Okay, and all of that for a twisted ankle?
Mostly just waiting for the discharge.
Okay. So part of it was you still had time left on your enlistment or whatever, and...
No, I didn't. I just waiting to go home with that. That's what they're going. Getting me a discharge, and because I was no good to them anymore.
Right. Yeah, because they were discharging a lot of men by then. It just struck me that between having, spent some time in combat and having been wounded once and a few other things, you ought to have had enough points to maybe have gotten out a little bit earlier than you did.
Oh, yeah, I had plenty of points, yes. But since I was waiting on this for my knee to heal and so forth.
So it was the knee in part that
I
was
would say
down.
that kept me going from one hospital to the next.
All right. Now, you mentioned that back on your first furlough before you had left the States, that was when you met your wife. How much communication did you have with her once you were overseas?
Well, I think my daughter might have the suitcase about that long, wide, and that high, full of all my letters. She kept every one of them.
So you wrote her regularly then?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it's funny. When I got wounded, I wrote to her and told her I was wounded. And my father didn't even know I was wounded. So my letter got there quicker than what the Army got to my father.
Okay. Now, when your Army notified your father that you'd been wounded, did they do that with sending a telegram and that kind of thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how that went.
All right. But you're going to get back. Now, did you have any trouble getting mail on your end? And did it take a while sometimes for her letters to get to you?
Yes. Yeah. And then you'd get a whole bunch at once. Yeah, 'cause you're traveling, and the mail truck had to catch you.
Now, once you got back to the States, while you were still in the service, did she get to come and visit you, or did she just wait for you to get out of everything?
She just waited. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't. Let's see, when I got back in well, when I was when I was in Virginia hospital yet. I did go to see her.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not sure on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, once you did finally get back home, what did you do next?
Well, I got out February 15th in 46, and I was so used to being bossed around. I got married again March 6th, March 15th.
All right. And what kind of job did you take?
Let's see, what was my first job when I got out? Oh, I had a job before I got out.
That's right.
I was a herdsman for a dairy on Long Island, New York.
Okay.
That's where she was from.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big dairy there, Johnny Bantama. I had that. I was a herdsman there for a year. And then I was, somebody else took over, and I was on milk delivery. And the second year. The third year, I bought the cows. Then I had my 10 miles away, 5 miles away, there was a farm, 20 acres. I bought the farm. It held 40 cows. And that's what I did for 6, 7 years.
And how did you wind up in Michigan in the end?
Well, after I got, then the milk prices went so high, or dairy prices, food, hay and oats and grain got so high, milk didn't go up that much. So then I sold all the cows, and I sold the farm, and I bought my father-in-law out. And I went from agriculture to aquaculture. And I started with the clam business. Now my brother-in-laws were her two brothers were my partners, and I bought her father out and Uncle Tom. He was 60-some years old. I bought him, and we all had equal shares. And they were doing about $300,000 a year in sales. Well, when I got on there, I took care of the sales, and in 5 years I had that up to $1 million. And then of course the next year was up to $2 million, but that's not because of selling. I didn't sell any more clams, just the price went up.
Right.
So what are you going to do? It ain't how much you make; it's how much you can keep between the two. So, but that's how it ended up.
So how long did you stay in the clam business?
27 years.
All right.
We came back here in '87. And I've been retired since then.
All right. Now, to think back over the time that you spent in the service, are there any kind of particular things that tend to come back to you or that you remember, you think about a little bit, that you haven't mentioned here yet? There might be single events or people or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mentioned something this past couple of days, and they just mentioned it here, but I can't even think of what that was. But it would have been interesting, I think.
You'll probably remember after we turn the camera off.
Yes, I'll probably remember that.
All right.
Tonight when I'm in bed.
Okay. Now, while you were there, did you have any particularly good friends or guys that you spent a lot of time with?
No.
Okay. Because I guess you did move around a lot.
I
You didn't
moved
stay
around
with
a
the same
lot.
group a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. And you'd come in as a replacement in
And
the
then,
first place.
I came as a replacement. And then, and some of the replacements, they got wounded and out of there. And you just didn't have a chance to have a friend for a long time.
Right.
And We, I can't say any more than a couple months at a time that I had a friend, you know.
Right. Now, to look back on the whole thing, how do you think your experience in the military wound up affecting you? Did you learn from it, or did it change you at all?
Well, I think it taught me patience and a lot of things like that. It made me stop and think to do things quicker. Otherwise, you know, I just went forward and did things without thinking. But I think that taught me a lot that way. And it seems like, I don't know, like I was always the foreman from the time I went in the service. Because in Doughboy and Groton Rapids in Arkansas, the first thing the sergeant did was put me as head of the squad.
Right.
You know, and then if they had to be left someplace, Harvey, you take over. You see, but I was never in any place long enough to come up with any what would you say? I ended up as a PFC.
Right. You didn't get a promotion. You didn't get to move up very much.
Never had time for a promotion to come in, or for an officer to put it in. I wasn't there long enough.
Okay. I guess one other thing I did want to ask you a little bit more about was you mentioned that when you came back to the 506th after you had been injured in Holland and you're on those advances, you were now with the S2. Were there particular events or things that happened to you as you were trying to, because you talked about trying to look for explosives or check out buildings and things like that?
Yeah, we had to look for booby traps under bridges.
And did you find any?
Oh yes, oh yes. But we had I was in there too, you know. Every day we was look through the types of explosives, how to dismember them, and so forth, and you knew what to do right away.
Okay.
One of them I had a slide of just a sheet of paper. I ripped a piece of paper out of the book, and I put that in between so the sparks wouldn't get there, and things like that, you know.
So you were actually dismantling some of these explosives.
Oh yes.
You didn't wait for the engineers to come in and do it.
Oh no, you couldn't wait that long. The soldiers were using them.
Okay.
They would have trapped there, they could have got killed, see. And because they had to go through, and that's why you removed it in a hurry.
Now, did you ever have to do that under fire? I mean, would there be Germans shooting at you? Okay.
No.
So that was at least safer.
No. Occasionally you would have a sniper's bullet or so go past you. You can hear it zing, you know. And you got so used to you didn't even duck your head anymore. What good to do anyway. And so that is about all I can remember right now.
Okay. Well, you've told us quite a bit. So I'd like to thank you for just coming and talking to me today.
Well, it was a pleasure.